Good evening. I'd like to call this regularly scheduled meeting of the Marquette Township Board to order for Tuesday, June 3rd. If you'd all please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Clerk, retire roll call, please.
Trustee Durant.
Here.
Trustee Truscott. Trustee LaRue.
Here.
Trustee Pompo.
Here.
Treasurer Johnson.
Here.
Clerk retires here, and Supervisor Limata.
Here.
Staff President is Manager Gerard. Superintendent Kirk Page. Committee members here are John Marks, Dave Wiegand, and Mike Springer.
Thank you. Next item on our agenda is the approval of the consent agenda. As you know, those items on the consent agenda are presented, do not typically require immediate board action. This evening's includes the approval of the prior meeting minutes of May, Rec Committee agenda from June 3rd, special meeting, Roads Committee report from the liaison, draft minutes from May 6th, and the agenda for June 3rd, Fire Department officers minutes, draft from May 5th, the Fire Department minutes, draft of May 12th, the Iron Ore Heritage Recreation Authority minutes from April 23rd, the agenda for May 28th, and the financial statements. Also includes correspondence, information not requiring board actions. There's a brochure from the Michigan Township Association on the road 2014 regional meetings that will be taking place in the UP. Bills payable in the amount of $104,321.04, and the April financial statements and treasurer's report. Are there any items in the consent agenda that any member of the board wishes to pull for further discussion?
A couple of them I'll just do it on my board comment.
Okay.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. The next item on your agenda is approval of the remainder of the agenda. Or any board members wishing to make changes to the agenda as presented. Clerk Rattari?
As for our pursuant to the Code of Conduct, I have a conflict with the agenda item 9A, since I am a candidate for that position. So I would like to ask the board to excuse me from that agenda item.
Okay. In light of that, I would also just point out that at your seats was handed out an opinion from the ZBA from Municipal Council Zappa that we received at 5:30 this evening. He also noted that because one of the applicants is the father of a board member, that his recommendation is holds the same for Diana Truscott, that in his opinion should not participate in the discussion or votes of any of the ZBA members. And I don't know if Diana, you considered that, or if you
Excuse.
so both Clerk Rattari and Trustee Truscott requesting to be excused from agenda item number 9A. I think it's finalists. The board wants to make a motion to force them to vote, then I think they can be excused.
I think you have to make a motion to excuse
Do we?
the board members.
Also
yeah.
move it.
I'll support.
We have motion and support to excuse the board members as noted from participation, discussion, and votes for 9A. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. Any other changes to the agenda? Pete?
We'd like to have Dave Wiggins talk on 9C about the roads, and then Mike Springer's going to talk a little bit about the recreation under public comment.
Okay, thank you. Dave, duly noted, you will reserve time for item number 9C. Anyone else? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Motion and support to approve the agenda. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. This is going to bring us up to public comment. Those members of the public wishing to make comment may do so at this time. Please approach the podium And if you kept your comments to 3 minutes or so would be appreciated, although Mike Springer's is going to go 5, and we're well aware of that.
Yeah. 4.5.
Okay.
Just face it this way. So I can see. Thank you. Good evening, I'm Mike Springer, I'm the chair of the rec committee. At tonight's special meeting, we reviewed this and the rec committee approved this to get out to the public and to the board. I want to thank the board. As you can see here, there's an old picture here from Schwemmwood Park and the property next to it that the board helped us acquire back in 2010. Okay, that's not going to work. Sorry. Eyesight. Try this. There we go. Okay. What we've done is we've put together a Google Earth map here to show the 3 different trailheads in the township and what we have planned for National Trails Day and the Iron Range Roll. A little closer up here, you'll see that our first trailhead crossing is at Northwood Lane, and it's real close to the Northwoods parking lot. So in that parking lot, we're going to have the fire department's going to be there. They're going to have an Argo. Emergency services are going to be there. We're going to have a porta potty. And also, that's the best place to park. So we're encouraging anybody doing a relay or wanting to join at that point that they go to Schwemmwood parking, or I'm sorry, the Northwoods parking lot and park there. And that will be where the actual trailhead will be for this event. That's been changed just recently. These are maps that Mr. McCarthy put together just to focus on the 3 different crossings that we have in the township. Again, Northwoods Lane, you can see the amenities that we're going to have at Northwoods parking lot. This is probably our most dangerous crossing. A lot of people use this road just to access their home. We will have crossing guards there. All racers need to stop at all roads. We will not be stopping traffic. It's important to know that. Also, it's important that the public knows that these 3 intersections will be used approximately from like 1:30 to 3 p.m. when you may see bicyclists racing through here. And the last place is on South Vanderboom Road, where there is a crossing there, and we'll have crossing guards there as well. This is about the Iron Range Roll, and the rec committee decided to participate for National Trails Day and help this first event on the Iron Ore Heritage Trail. It starts at the museum, the Cliff Shaft Museum in Ishpeming, and it finishes just before the Marquette Commons. It's a 16-mile ride, and it's happening this Saturday. There are opportunities, or first of all, 75% of the proceeds for this goes to the YMCA for a Reach and Rise mentoring program. And there's still a number of opportunities for people to volunteer. So if you'd like to volunteer and come out and enjoy the race and see what's happening at Schwemmwood Park, please do. You can sign up at 40 Below website that is on the screen. Now for the volunteers, we have a couple of places that you can park and easily access Schwemmwood Park. There will be a porta potty there. Also to the left, you'll see that we will have a water aid station at the trailhead. Now you can participate, you can still sign up and participate in this event, the first one of its kind. Or you can come and have fun and volunteer and join us at Schwemmwood Park or at the Northwoods parking lot. So thanks, we're looking forward to having a great Saturday on National Trails Day. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Wasn't you paying attention?
Well, Mike is moving. Just a point of clarification. The parking is at the old Northwoods Restaurant parking lot, not on Northwoods Lane.
Anyone else wishing to make public comment may do so at this time.
Hi, my name's Larry Gilbertson. I live down here in the corner of Brandon and Vandenboom, and I have a ditch of a problem. I got water that runs down through there so fast, it carries so much debris with it, leaves, sand that the county puts down, plastic shopping bags, and my culverts are getting plugged up. Yesterday, I called the county, and he was telling me it's my problem. I said, well, don't you ditch the culverts anymore? He says, well, yeah. Well, years ago, we used to call in the county would be there in 2 or 3 days to ditch it, just to muck it out. But now he's telling me it's my problem. I gotta take care of it. There's quite a volume of water that goes through that, so I was hoping that something could be done with that. I would like to see them close culvert there. Safety matter for another thing, you know, I mean, some little kid falls in there and that water's rushing. I get a pond in my backyard right now, so I'm almost 70 years old. I'm not gonna shovel that out myself. And what am I gonna do with all the county sand? I don't know what to do with it, so I just thought I'd mention it to you people, and hopefully you can come to bat for me and help me combat the problem over there. Thanks.
Thanks for your comments. We'll have Manager Gerard do some follow-up and get back to you.
So Dave Wigan, 350 Brookton Road. One thing Chairman Springer forgot to mention is we rescheduled the next month's Rec Committee meeting to June 10th, or this month's Recreation Committee meeting to June 10th, because some of us are going to be out of town. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, Dave.
Hi, Jim Clark, manager, Cornerstone Development Corporation. I need to reserve time for items, I think 9B, 9D, 10A, no, excuse me, 10B, and 10C. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Anyone else? Seeing none, I will close public comment. Move to board member comment. Those members of the board wishing to make comment may do so at this time. Ernie?
Just one thing that was in the consent agreement, the Iron Range Heritage minutes and financials. Those are the type of information, if we're gonna put $200-some thousand to the library, these are the type of information we need to get from the library and that. And not from the advisory board, from the library board itself. So that's something we need to address and deal directly with the board. Really, we had 193,000 last year, 208 this year. If we're going on the same road, we're talking another 15,000 or more coming up next year. So we need to get some of this information from them on a timetable. Because everyone else that we work with, as far as dollar-wise, they provide us with information on that. And as I said before, I said, I went to that one advisory meeting, I'd never go back again. It's a waste of time for anyone to go there. Yeah. So that's one item. The other item is the audit. I see I had an email from our accountant that it will be here in the next week. To me, when we originally started that, going through the procedure to hire someone, I mentioned I wanted it in May, and I wanted them to be here to review it with us. Well, here it is in June, and we still don't have the audit. I don't know why, but I'm not accepting it. I think it should be here by now. It should be in our hands. And when I talked to the gentleman from the company here, when he was in town here, I mentioned that, and they had no problems with that. I think we need to ask them why we can't get it when we wanted it, and that. So that's my concern at this point in time.
You did get it electronically this week from Lois, yeah?
I have not seen it.
It was out, it's in your email. It was sent
When?
out by Lois on Monday, I believe.
I'll have to go and look, because I didn't see it come through. I got a notice that it would be this week, and that's the only notice I got from Lois. Was it?
I have it yesterday.
It was sent, yeah, Monday at 3:30.
Yeah, I'll have to go back and look, because I haven't been on it much. I have too many other things going on right now. But that's the one concern. That should have been in our hands before now, and there's no reason not to. They just have to set their time schedule to meet ours, and that we don't meet theirs. And the other thing is, I handed out 2 items to you from the treasurer's standpoint. I cannot put it in packets or anything else, not allowed to under state statute. One is our investments, and the other one is the personal property tax, the status of it. So if anyone has any questions on it, I'll try to answer them now or later, so however you want to do it. That's all I have.
Anyone else? Pete?
I didn't, I wanted to ask our manager to take a look at the millage language for roads. Forgot. I guess we have to come up with the approved language for that, or who does that, you and Randy?
Correct, and that, we'll be looking at that for the November ballot.
Right.
Yep, so we'll be developing that. Essentially, it's, if the board wishes to renew that millage, it'll be essentially the same language, just with a different segment of streets identified. And that would come from the roads committee.
When is the millage up on the warrant, the other one, the millage?
This is the final year of that millage.
And that was how much
That
was
was
that?
5 years, .85 mils over 5 years.
0.85.
That was for the reconstruction of Werner and for the resurfacing of Brookton.
And so that'll come off, and now we're gonna go ask for millage to take care of the roads in
If
Marquette Township.
correct, if the board wishes to renew that, we would put it back on as a renewal question for the November ballot. And Clerk Rotari, what's the deadline for that? I think it's sometime in July.
It's July 29th, I believe.
So we'll have to have that done,
Mhm.
but we'll have to raise that up a little bit, don't you think?
Well, that'll be a discussion that will probably happen at your next board meeting.
Okay.
I believe the road committee is going to be prepared to come to the next board meeting on the 17th and make some suggestions to you. They did provide the proposed plan, which the board has adopted. Now it's a matter of what portions of that would be selected to be covered by that specific millage question.
I just thought we're waiting on the finances and how to do it, and then the wording for it, so move that on, so, all right, thank you.
Thanks, Pete. Anyone else? Lynn, go ahead.
A couple things. There was no planning commission meeting last week. That was canceled for lack of agenda items. But the one before we talked about, it was pretty much a repeat of everything we had done the week before, talking about the text amendments and things that we're trying to change. We had a little discussion on like the CIP, the fact that we were going to be doing it a little bit differently and connecting differently with the planning commission. We had a presentation and discussion on the Iron Range role. So it was kind of like a fill-in meeting. It wasn't, it was nothing really urgent, but you've gotten those minutes too. And I'm really sorry I missed the meeting. I'm on medication again for bronchitis. But I did listen to the meeting, of course, on YouTube, which was great. Lots of good discussion. I would have voted the same way you all did. Not that that matters now, but just so you know, I was in agreement with what you had come up with. I had asked about having the library discussion on the agenda, and it just killed me. I couldn't talk. It wouldn't have done any good if I was here anyway. But a couple of the things, I agree with Ernie as far as dealing with the board. We need to figure out a way, and I'm still willing to go to the meetings if I can get healthy enough. I can be that liaison if you want. The packets that come in that we get, you know, that's almost a half-inch thick, and it goes through every program almost of every day. I can't see adding this to our packet, you know, if we ask for this. I can pick out the financial stuff and maybe put it in your mailboxes or get it to Randy to put in the packet. It does a website report. It talks about all the little programs, and I'm not demeaning these by any means because they're fabulous. Everybody loves them. But I don't think this is what we're looking for. So if we order a packet, that's my point, is this is what we're gonna get. It's extremely comprehensive, almost down to a daily report of what happens. Each manager, each little department manager does a separate report, you know, and it might be like Monday we did this, we had a tea, and Tuesday the kids saw a movie, and Wednesday, you know. Anyway, so it's very detailed. So if that's what you want to do, I'm willing to try to make those meetings. They're usually right before ours. But I'll try to do that, and that's once a month. But I really think we need to consider somehow, I'll take you back a little bit. One of the beginning discussions with the whole, whether we put the library on the ballot or not, a few years ago, was the whole taxation without representation issue. It wasn't whether, and that's why we started doing it 1 or 2 years at a time. That was the impetus to get us to have a discussion and call the librarian or go to their meeting and try to figure out with the board how we can, as contributors with tax dollars, have an impact on what that board does. That has been my objection, and that's what I was going to bring out last time. I have nothing against the library. I've been in there, I've seen their programs, I've read these packets. They're phenomenal, the things they do. The people love them. We need to support them. My objection from the beginning was how we're doing it. And that's the discussion we've never had. And I posed it to the library board the last meeting I went to and said, you know, I challenged them to come up with a different method of funding that was more equitable. If we have, you know, you could get into the discussion of how much do we pay per card holder? Well, they count 5 card holders if the dad goes and gets a card and there's 5 people in the family. I mean, you can get into the nuts and bolts of how we're paying for this and whether the numbers themselves are legitimate. And can they charge us more because we're out of the city limits? Yes, and the city charter dictates what they have to do. But it all boils down to the fact that we are paying for a service that is considered a tax by our legal counsel, and we have no say as to what that organization does with the money. Maybe we want a service that they don't provide. I'm not saying that they wouldn't agree to it if we posed it, but we need to pose it. If they're spending money on something we think they shouldn't, Marquette Township taxpayers need to be able to say that. They need to have that. That's the whole taxation without representation issue. And that's my objection. And I think we still need to have some kind of a conversation, either among ourselves first and then maybe jointly with the board. But if we're going to continue to pay taxes and not have a say as to what happens with that money, I think that's not right for the public. That's not right. That's not part of our due diligence and our financial responsibility to taxpayer dollars. We count every penny in Kirk's budget, and we criticize it and we analyze it, you know. And here we got $200 and some plus $1,000 that the businesses and residents are giving away, and they have no say as to what happens with that. I mean, let's go back to the Revolution. This is where this all came. Do we have to dump tea in Lost Creek or what, you know? I mean, it sounds kind of crazy, but I think this is important, and that's the issue we need to decide on. And then, when we get it set, we don't have to do this 1 year, 2 year, bring this up in discussion. I think this is not a contract in my mind. A contract in my mind is 2 people sit down and negotiate something, and Supervisor Limertine and I have talked about this. He disagrees. He says, this is the contract, we agree to it, we sign it. But in even the way that the attorney describes it, it's not a joint contract. It's something that they've done. Yes, we are agreeing to it, but we have no say. So that's my big objection. I'd like to, I don't know, you already had your discussion, I understand that. We're going to go 2 years. So it's probably like next year, I think we need to do something. And like I said, I will continue to go to the meetings, bring you some updates from, you know, the financial standpoint, eliminating some of the small stuff. I'll have the packet if anybody wants the information. That's fine. So I don't know if you've got any questions for me or direction or whatever. I'll do whatever you want, whatever the pleasure is. That's my 2 cents.
Okay, thanks, Lynn. Anyone else?
Dennis,
Quick, you've already had your
Can I
turn.
ask, Lynn, do they have a drop box in the mall up here anywhere in Marquette Township for the library?
Yeah, for the
Yes.
books, yeah.
Okay. Where is it?
Kind of like right in the middle of the mall where there's a post office box there
All right,
too.
thank you.
If there's no other comment, we'll close board member comment. And Lynn, you brought up some good questions. We'll address them at a future agenda.
Thank you.
Brings up the next item on our agenda, which is 8A, forum discussion. It's been on the last few agendas. We haven't been able to get to it. It's a discussion of board policies and procedures. By way of recap, we do have a working document that we had all put together during a retreat going back a couple of years. And as we were looking through this and comparing it to some others, this one was really written with the idea that it was following policy governance. My suggestion last time was that look at someone else's, and can we adopt this into our board policy manual? Not so much as adopting policy governance, but so that we have a working document. As Clerk Rotari has pointed out on numerous occasions, the policy manual that we have for board policy is woefully inadequate and outdated. Because we've thrown this on the forum discussion a couple times, we moved it due to the fact that we know how time-consuming it's going to be. I do have a suggestion that I wanted to throw out to the board in the interest of being able to move this thing forward. I think it's very important, but I don't think we can do due diligence during a regular meeting. My recommendation would that we form a 3-person committee from the board that sits down and goes through. I mean, there's nothing new in here. We wrote these as a group. It's the same 7 individuals who were involved in writing them. Take what we have as a working document with that 3-person panel, go through it again, look for relevant policy, convert it to more of a policy type manual like we were used to before, put it in some binders, and then look through it, and once it's been converted into that type of a document with an index and flowing through, when the 3-person panel is prepared to bring it back forward, then make it a full board item and hold a special meeting and be able to do it that way so that we can actually put our time into it rather than try to do pieces of it during a already 2.5-hour meeting. And so as part of the forum discussion, I wanted to throw that out there. I mean, my first recommendation is that we do a 3-person committee to go through it. My other recommendation is that you look at the board officers, which would be the supervisor, treasurer, and clerk, to take it upon themselves as officers to go through the policy manual and then present it to the board at a work session to go, so that, like I said, we've already, the policies that are written were written by the 7 of us, not by one of us, and so I don't think anyone, well, you know, it's been a couple of years, we may need some updates, but that would be my suggestion, and of course it's a forum discussion, so I'll open it up and get your thoughts. Pete?
The suggestions after we go through it, the suggestion would be turn it over to you, and then use the 3 panels will take that up. Good.
No, it's just to have 3 of us sit down, and if we have 3, we're not having a quorum there. We can get 3 people to meet, whether it's for coffee in the morning or evening, and go through, and I would think that within 30 days we can probably get through the whole thing and have a document prepared to go to the full board for a work session.
But if we have a suggestion, we just pass it on to you and then.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Then?
We kind of, I even left it marked where we left off. So I have comments, not, well, yeah, there's some extra writing on here, that I thought we would go through. You know, we got partway through this and we stopped, of actually going through section by section and making our comments and asking questions and stuff. I have mentioned a few times that I thought we should try to look at a policy governance method again. And so however the board, I would be willing to volunteer to do that, be part of the three, but if the group of the three of you want to do that, that's fine with me too. I can just write down some of my comments, and so I'm flexible either way. And most of the boards I'm on or have left, it's the exec committee that takes care of that kind of stuff and brings the recommendation back to the board. So like Pete says, if we just have certain things we can just email them to you and.
And you will get the entire document back. I don't think that the three-member panel is going to change what the document exists now. It's more just to put it in a format so that it's more in a policy manual format versus a policy governance policy manual format.
Okay.
And then the full board would take it on after that. But any comments that you had, you would like the panel to look at certainly could be submitted in a written format so that they can be considered as we're putting it together. But I think you still want to have that discussion with the full panel, with the full board.
Okay.
I don't have a problem with that. I think when we get the rough draft done, I think it should be a work session rather than a board meeting, actual
Right.
work session. So everyone can sit down and go through it. And it may take us a couple hours to do it. And then-
Right.
But if someone really wants to be on the committee,
Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to give everyone extra work, but I did it that way for a reason, just like three officers of the board, and it's just with three of us to go in, meet when you can, and try to get through it within, 3 or 4 meetings and be able to have something we can present back to the board.
I don't have a problem with it, just trying to setting up a schedule right now too. So.
Right. Diana, thoughts?
I think it's a good idea to do what Ernie said, to go through it, and then we'll go have a work session.
Yeah. Dan?
Well, in use of speed, I will make the motion that we form a 3-member committee to go over this,
No,
considering of the officers of the board.
I'll second it.
We have
can't in
to-
a forum
Can't
discussion.
do it.
We
in
have to
forum
wait till we come out of the forum
Oh.
discussion, but you can do it the minute we get out of the forum discussion.
Are you trying to get yourself off it?
But I think if we keep on trying to do it this way, we're never going to get it done. And that's my thoughts. And I know it was a surprise to both Ernie and Randy this evening that I just threw that out there, but it was just some of the notes that I had written, and I'm going through it, and I thought, how do we move this forward? How do we move it forward? And I just thought that might be the most expeditious way. Any other comments? If not, we'll close the forum discussion, and it's not an agenda item. Can we,
Can
out
make
of
a
one?
motion now.
Okay, the forum discussion is closed. Dan, you have a motion?
Yes, again, in the use of speed, I would make the motion that the 3 officers of the board form a committee to come up with our personnel manual as per our policy governance manual that we worked on.
I second it.
We have a motion and second. Any other comments? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay, we will not waste meeting time. The 3 of us will get together after the meeting or whatever and try to get some schedules together to see how or when we can move forward. The next item on our agenda is 9A, consider appointments to committee vacancies. As you know, we're talking about the Zoning Board of Appeals. I did, like I said, it was received at 5:25 from Municipal Council, just as answering some of the questions that have been raised about the ZBA and potential membership. It was like a 4-page or 4 pages of response because all councils are wordsmiths when they want to answer your question. And when you look at it, kind of went through the candidates that we had and whether there were issues. As you all know, initially this came before us with Mr. Mike Fedrizzi, although I don't believe he has ever, at least to my knowledge, completed the actual application form as the board had requested. We do have one from Clerk Rattari, and we also have one that was received from Mr. Bill Truscott that you're all familiar with. the other thing that I would like to point out in Attorney Zappa's transmittal has to do with the fact that he mentions it a couple of different times, but one of the primary purposes of naming alternate ZBA members and why that might be a good thing, especially in light of the fact that one of our candidates is a board member, and it's not like a lot of the items that go before the ZBA have come before the board first. Typically, it would be more of a conflict with the Planning Commission. And in that case, the Planning Commission member has to abstain from discussion or voting on the item before the ZBA. That exact same thing would hold true, therefore, for any board member who was serving on the Zoning Board of Appeals. They would also have to refrain, but like I said, I'm not sure in recent memory that I can think of a ZBA item that had come before the board and then had gone to the Zoning Board of Appeals, so I don't believe that to be as a big point of conflict. But we do have 3 candidates. Again, one never completed the application that the board had requested. One of the things that I believe it was Trustee Durant had wanted to have the opportunity to talk to all of the candidates before she was prepared to make a decision. And I don't know if you've done that with Fedrizzi in light of the fact that we didn't receive a
I was waiting for the
formal application from him.
Contact information and stuff.
But we do have, we still have 2 viable candidates before you. Clerk Rattari has expressed his interest, as well as Bill Truscott. So what's the board's pleasure?
I have a question.
Sure.
I had an email from the clerk that he had applied for it, but I never saw an application. Never came through. At least I never got one.
He had a formal application that was, yeah, it was emailed out again, Ernie. It was part of that package.
Okay.
And since you didn't see it, I will say where he put, he's a 40-year resident of Marquette Township. His position was for the Zoning Board of Appeals, and in response to the question, why would you like to serve in this board? Clerk Rattari has said, I think I can bring some valuable experience to this board by serving on it from my experience on the Township Board in the last 4 years as clerk. His applicable experience is the Township Board for the last 8 years. Lynn, you had a question or comment?
Yes, sir. Just wondering who appoints the alternate then? Is that part of our process
Be
to?
the exact same process, and they would be an alternate. They wouldn't sit in on regular meetings, but they would be called in as needed.
Well, I guess a follow-up to that then is if one or the other, do they need to reapply as an alternate?
I think that, maybe, I think we could appoint them as an alternate. I mean, they expressed interest on serving on the Zoning Board of Appeals. I think that you can appoint them still off the application and say that you are serving as an alternate member, that, good, congratulations, you're part of the Zoning Board of Appeals as an alternate member. Your application was reviewed positively by the board or whatever, but as a alternate member, and you'll be called upon when needed. I mean, it's still an appointment to the Zoning Board of Appeals. Nothing changes there, other than you're not a permanent member, So, anyone care to make a motion of any of the 3 candidates?
I'll make a motion to accept the application of Clerk Rattari as ZBA board member with alternative William Truscott.
Is there a second? Motion and support. Any comment? Seeing none, the motion before you is to appoint Clerk Rattari as a member of the Zoning Board of Appeals with Mr. William Truscott to serve as the, alternate member should conflict or absences come up. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? That motion passes 5-0
With two
with two
abstentions.
abstentions.
Two abstentions.
And it needed to be, because it has to be the majority of the full seated board, it couldn't be 3-2. It had to be at least 4 members voting in the affirmative for the motion to carry forward. Not the voting, not a majority of the voting members, but a voting of the full board. So that's why I did the count, to make sure we were on the up and up. Thank you. Thank you, Clerk Rattari and Bill Truscott, for your willingness to step up again and serve your community. And then, like I said, John, I gave you a copy of Attorney Zappa's communication in regards to Zoning Board of Appeals, something that you may want to share with your members at your next meeting. But I'll leave that to you. The next item on our agenda is the 9B construction update. Manager Gerard and Jim Clark is here to provide. Jim, if you want to start, and then if Randy, you have anything to add.
Good evening, board members. Jim Clark, manager, Cornerstone Development. I just want to point out that Bromley Hall from Tom Hall Contracting was not able to make it here tonight, so I will be giving you the report with some input from Randy and from Kirk Page if necessary. To date, right now, we have a temporary occupancy permit for the Public Works facility. They are able to use the entire facility, but I believe there has been some technical glitches with some of the telecommunication systems that needed to be integrated into the system, which is under the scope of the township's responsibilities. Kirk could get into more detail with that if you have questions on that. As of today, now that road restrictions have been lifted as of yesterday, we have mobilized to the site. Tomorrow we're going to be doing the site concrete is done. We're going to be doing some of the on-site or exterior masonry work that's necessary for the sign and for the dumpster enclosure. And then on Thursday we are scheduled to pave. The paving will be done at the 2-inch commercial level. We did reduce that from a 3-inch to a 2-inch in a previous design development revision. And on Friday and beginning of next week, we'll be doing up the exterior cleanup and the finished landscaping. On the interior, there's still a few other minor items we're looking at. One item which is part of the scope of the work is we're going to be grinding the garage floors to make them all look the same consistency. There was the old concrete that needs to be grinded out so it looks like it's newer, and then there's a sealant that's put on. That contractor is out of the area at this time, so what we will be doing is coordinating with Public Works staff to get in there and do that work, and we will be moving the necessary equipment and materials that may be on the floor as needed, and with our staff, and try and be at least as disruptive to the township as possible. We ran into another issue that with the locker room area. The locker, I guess the uniforms and the boots and everything that staff uses, the lockers that were installed are your typical locker room that you would see in a commercial setting. And they're a little small because of their uniform requirements, so we're looking at some alternatives to do some either change out of lockers or some additional larger lockers. We haven't come to a final resolution, but we'll be working with Randy and Kirk on that to see what we can resolve. And one of the other things that was the reason we had a temporary occupancy permit for the building was the handicap interior ramp. It was originally designed to be concrete and steel. We elected to take the concrete steel system out, and we were going to try and not have a ramp at all because of the physical requirements of the job, but we found out that the ramp might be necessary if they ever needed to roll equipment up and into the grinder room too. So we elected to build that with a wood ramp, and it's a permanent wood ramp, and with a landing outside the double door area where it connects into the interior of the building. And that is, we built it out of treated wood. Now, that treated wood will need to cure for a while before we can paint it. It needs to basically dry out a little bit. That's what a recommendation of treated wood. It needs to dry out, because if you put a paint material on there, it might peel off if it doesn't cure long enough or dry out. And other than that, we're right on schedule. Anything that Randy or Kirk might add to the process? We've had quite a good team working on this, and it's gone pretty well.
Just to let board members know, we have, Public Works has begun moving some of the items into the building. Some of the office equipment has been moved from the old Township Hall. There's still some items remaining in there that we'll be declaring as surplus and disposing of prior to our turning the building over to the new owners. We're anticipating, as of our last meeting, we're anticipating full occupancy in there by the 17th of this month.
Any other questions for Jim or Randy on the construction update? Seeing none, we'll say thank you and move to the next agenda item.
Thank you.
9C, consider the road committee recommendation for road crack sealing. This was on your agenda last time. We asked that it be pushed back to the next agenda so that we could gather more information for the board's edification. You did get a copy of a transmittal from Randy and Kurt Tavala from the Marquette County Road Commission, as well as a copy from Dave Wiegand from the road committee, talking about the order of repair, the chip seal and crack filling, and the summary of each category. Dave, you want to jump up now and walk the board through any of that? This would probably be an appropriate time.
Well, Dave is heading for the podium. Just to let the board know, what we're waiting for basically is the financial information, the cost information from the road commission. They have put the list out for bids, but they do not have the bid specs back as yet, so we still don't have the dollar amounts. I suspect that they might be fairly close to what Dave had listed in his sheets. Those did come from the road commission. The variable here is that it's out on bids, and depending on how hungry contractors are for the work, they may come in somewhat less.
Thanks, Randy. Dave?
Yeah, the other variable that might be in there is there are 2 stretches of that road that need some reconstruction, so that's going to certainly change the price too. I haven't seen any paperwork that you were referring to other than the recommended order of repair, and I didn't attend the last meeting for the board, but I did watch it on TV, and there was some questions and concerns expressed about why Commerce and not something that needed reconstruction. I can address those if it's the board's pleasure.
Yeah, I think there was some concerns expressed about, because it's a newer road, and why would we be looking at chip sealing a newer road as opposed to some of the worst roads? So if you want to address that, Dave, feel free.
Briefly, if you remember the presentation that was done a couple months ago, it shows the deterioration curve of a new asphalt road. It's got a life expectancy of 15 years, and that's if no maintenance is done on it. If you do preventive maintenance early, you can extend that to 30 years of road life, and I believe Commerce Road is close to 15 years old, if I'm right. And it's got a Pacer rating of down around 7 or 6?
6.
6, and which is what earmarks it for chip seal. And the budget dollars are quite small that are actually being applied towards road repair this year. And if you apply those budget dollars to road repair and you decide to apply them to reconstruction, you're going to get a few hundred yards is about the extent of what you're going to get for reconstruction. So it's just going to be, it's going to be throwing a cup full of water on a fire is all it's going to be doing. If you go to the extent of chip sealing all of Commerce, it's going to take that road and it's going to move that from a 6 back to a 9, which is going to add to its service life. And instead of being a 15-year-old, we're going to push it out to, it's going to go out to at least a 20-year road. And every time you do that type of maintenance, that's what pushes that forward. And if you remember on the presentation for the asset management, the whole theory behind asset management is if you take care of the roads that require minor, comparatively minor repair dollars, the cost in the long run to keep your roads in good shape is minimal. And if you remember the comparison we did, the difference between the worst first approach and the asset management approach, and we're talking about doing the entire township and bringing those roads up to acceptable status, the difference over 7 years, worst first, is going to be about $3.5 million more than it is to do an asset management approach, and that's what the board looked at when they accepted the asset management approach. And the reason Commerce come up on the top of the list is because of the other factors that were entered in there. It is an emergency road. It is a complete street, or it's been designated as a complete street. There's certainly a lot of traffic that's been added to it with the township hall, with the fire department, and with the theater down the road. And if anything is prime for a little bit of preventive maintenance, and the preventive maintenance is fairly cheap for the mile of road you're getting fixed, it would be Commerce.
Thanks, Dave. Randy, I have a question for you. Now, you're bringing this before the board to ask, if we agree with the road committee's recommendation for chip seal and crack repairs. So we're asking the board, do they agree that this is the way we want to go? But we don't have a dollar amount before us yet to actually approve the project.
No, we do not. That comes from the road commission, and they anticipate that they'll have that back here fairly quickly. The last conversation I had with Kirk Tavola, they were simply waiting for the responses back from the contractors now that they had the complete list of the roads that were being considered.
Do you have limit of what funds you have available to accomplish this project?
Oh, well, at the moment, all that I have available is what we have in the budget, and as you'll recall, every year we put $50,000 into the general fund budget for road improvements specifically, and that's where I would suggest that this funding come from for Commerce Drive.
Okay. So when you look at the list that we're looking at and the estimated costs, and you look at the reality of that you have $50,000 to spend, clearly we can't do all of it, but we can do the road committee's recommendations on what's the best way to go, and it may be, which one's more important, and that's why Dave's saying, do we do Commerce Drive even though there's worse roads in the township? We have to be able, as board members, to answer questions from residents when they say, the road's in great shape compared to mine. And that's why I'm bringing out the points that I'm bringing out, is just so that they'll be asked and answered, so that the board is very comfortable with having those conversations with residents when the reality of it is how much we can afford to spend in any given year. The other thing is, while you're here as a road committee, Dave, and we're going to talk about at a future date, we have 3 more meetings basically to put the information together for the road millage for November ballot. And working with Randy, how confident are you that that will be forthcoming to the board within the next meeting or two?
I think the road committee can have another presentation ready for the board at the next meeting. You got to remember, the road committee is strictly order, repair, and the asset management program. Manager Gerard is working on possible finance options and funding. The road committee has not been involved in that, and tonight was the first I heard that the road committee, I recall that I heard that the road committee is going to be involved in the actual wording of the millage on the ballot.
I think the wording of the millage stays the same regardless. We know what our millage wording will be. It's still, Clerk Rattari can put the wording together and put it past legal. I think more of it is your recommendation to Manager Gerard and then his recommendation to the board on what type of millage we're looking to raise. And based upon your recommendations as a road committee, how much do you think that the residents of this township are prepared to commit in road millage to accomplish your goals?
And what I would be bringing to you would be that calculation, basically, working with the roads committee in terms of what the order of repair is that we're looking at on the program that's been proposed and been tentatively accepted by the board. What the dollar amount is that we're actually talking about, and what the millage and durations would be that would be your options, basically, for the board to consider for the wording on the language. The last, as you recall, the Werner Street project, we had an engineered cost of the entire project. We projected that over 5 years, and that's where the .85 mils came in. So we'd be projecting the total cost over the amount of the length of time, basically, that you wanted to ask the residents to commit to, and that distills down to the millage that would be necessary. And we calculate into that our average growth, our anticipated developments, and what those impacts on the millage are.
So you'll bring recommendations back, possibly at the next meeting, to the board saying, with this millage amount for 5 years, this is what we can accomplish. This millage amount for 5 years, same 5 years, we could accomplish this, and then the board will make that determination on which direction we want to go in.
Yeah, I would do the same thing that we did with Werner. If you remember, on the Werner, we had 3, 5, 7, and 10-year proposal, so that to take a look at, and each of those had a different millage amount attached to them, and you wanted to get that finished and paid for relatively quickly, so we settled on the 5-year.
Okay, thanks, Randy.
Mhm.
So what would you like from us this evening?
If I could, for just a moment, the dollar amount really hasn't changed. It's $7.1 million, and those numbers have come off the Pazer rating and from Kurt Tavola from the county. And the difference, what makes that $7.1 million is we removed US 41 from the consideration. We removed County Road 492 because it's already earmarked to be have renovations next year. And we removed Wright Street from the city line up to the Target intersection because of its truck route status and all the attention that's getting. So once you remove those from the mix is what brings that down to the $7.1 million. Obviously, there's going to be some inflation in that if you're looking at doing the repairs over 7 years. There's going to be some inflation that has to be figured into there, but that's what the manager does. So right now, it's looking at $7.1 million.
Ernie?
I think first question I have for the manager, do we have any funds left over from the current millage, or has that all been allocated?
Well, if you remember, when we calculated that millage out, over that 7-year, that 5-year period of .85 mils, that was anticipated to generate $834,000. It actually generated slightly more than that with the increase in taxation that we have when we applied that to Brookton Road. That's how we funded that. That was in the millage, the language, and basically what I did with that is I took that $74,000 and financed it separately. So this last collection that we do this year will apply to that for Brookton Road.
I think the other question I have, when doing these calculations, moving out into the future, it's going to be very difficult because we don't know the status of the tax tribunal or the big boxes, and this is going to be a difficult way to do any forecasting as far as finances are concerned at this point in time, too.
Well, we did, along those lines, just so the board members know, we did file today. We filed the application for leave to appeal to the Supreme Court, and if the Supreme Court declines to accept that application and refuses to hear the case, then we have a pretty good idea of what the impact on our taxes is going to be, and that's what the basis that I would use to calculate the time frame in terms of how long you would want to go out on the millage.
It could take up to a year before we hear back from the Supreme Court. So we have to move forward with the what-if scenario. And the spreadsheets that you saw 2 weeks ago that showed you the tax impact that we would anticipate. If you recall, there were 2 spreadsheets, one with the ones that were currently pending, and then one if all businesses were involved, and with our best guesstimate of where those might be settled at. We're going to have to move forward with that scenario on hand, knowing that that's a very real possibility.
And that is where I would go. I would, as usual, as I do with the budgets, I would take the conservative approach on calculating that. And if we do better in the Supreme Court, that would simply allow that to be paid off sooner.
Pete?
The 1.85 will be coming off at the end of this year here, so basically, you probably asked for 1 mil. So, we're not gonna add more, another 2 mils or whatever it might be, excuse me. But one's coming off, and then we're gonna ask for an additional one, or whatever the way that you wanna word it, so.
Right.
Well, I think as a general rule of thumb, the .85 mils, if that was renewed for a number of years, it's going to generate something over $900,000 a year, towards that $7 million.
900,000 in the course of 5 years, not over a year.
Yeah, I'm sorry, correct. Over the course of 5 years.
I didn't want people to think we had $1 million a year.
No, over the course of 5 years. But that gives you a rough rule of thumb on what you might be looking at for a project of that magnitude.
Pete?
And the question Manager Gerard have to tell us is, do we do it as the taxes come in, or do we borrow against it, the millage, and get it, start a faster progression to get it done more off, a little faster than waiting till you have the money to do it. And I really think that we should take a little look at that, because the roads are very bad. And how much is a lane, a mile of a new road, Dave?
For reconstruction,
Yes.
it's about $300,000. And that's an average. I mean, it depends on what has to be done with the reconstruction. And that's why a lot of what we recommended out of the road committee was a crush and shape, especially in the Trowbridge area. Because a lot of that crush and shape can reduce the cost of the reconstruction and can mitigate some of that additional cost when you get down in the lower areas that are going to need some base buildup.
I was talking to someone we talked about a while back, but some townships has turned the blacktop into gravel. And that's not very cheap either, because when you turn into gravel, every time you got rain, you gotta get a grader over there, and it's constantly maintaining that, so it's not cheaper to turn it back into gravel as they're finding out, so.
No, the county will maintain those, right?
Pardon me?
The county will maintain those, right?
It costs money to do it though. Yeah, right.
And there are other aspects to it. You have more damage to vehicles from gravel and, dust and a variety of things that the residents are not real pleased with. But, getting to one of the points that you raised, Trustee LaRue, is that when we bring this package back to you, it'll be, options on, other than millage. I mean, there are other options. There's bonding capabilities. There are bonding capabilities through the road commission as the township's engineering entity, basically, which it is. Combinations of straight millage and public financing, depending upon what the interest rates are at the time. On prior road projects, we've been able to negotiate very low interest rates with balloons, 7 years, 10 years, things such as that have benefited by being able to capitalize on low construction costs. So it reduced the overall cost of the project by bidding it all up front, financing it publicly, and then paying it back with the millage. So
But we're not
those are
only
all
talking-
options.
yeah,
That,
we're not only talking about fixing the roads, we're talking about fixing the drainage problem.
well, that's
When we
part
go
of
through it, I
yeah.
mean, we have big drainage problems in the township. You had a gentleman here tonight hollering about the runoff. If you go down, an example of my road, all the sand from the top of the hill goes down to the end of Woodridge, and it floods them out there. You're over on Vanderboom, that guy who's selling his house over there, he got a whole front yard full of gravel. So our plans is not just to fix the road. Our plan is to fix the runoff, the side of the road, and have, further on is some of our roads will be complete streets, so we'll add a little width to it, and so people can walk safely and then finish it up. So it's gonna be a complete job. It's not just a overlay of this, and you still got the problem with the sewer. We plan on fixing the sewer and the runoff at the same time.
There are multiple projects that cross, yes.
Let's refocus back on the agenda item for today, though, which is you're asking us to consider the recommendations, road crack sealing. What do you specifically need from us to move forward, Randy?
What I would request is a motion from the board authorizing us to expend from the general fund not more than $50,000 to accomplish the crack seal on Commerce Drive.
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second? Motion and support, comment. Dan?
I look at this recommended order of repair, and like I stated last time, obviously Commerce Drive is a newer road, and I realize it is a heavier trafficked road. But I'm looking at all the other passer rating roads that are sixes on here, and just because they're not emergency routes or complete streets, they get put down on the bottom. And they all were under suggested repair of chip seal. So by bypassing all these other streets that are obviously older than Commerce Drive, we've now converted those that should have been done as a chip seal to probably much more extensive repair. Isn't that correct?
That for me, it depends on how the millage goes and how quick we move on that. If you remember the deterioration curve, it holds up pretty good from a 10 on to about a 6 for about 7 or 8 years, and then the curve steepens sharply. So yes, if you don't get at them in the near future, they're gonna continue to deteriorate at a faster rate than just a chip seal.
Anyone else? Lynn, go ahead.
Wondering how, this is a wide-scoped project, so that if we're going to, if we put $50,000 toward a road in the minds of the public, toward a road that doesn't look like it needs it, are we going to be able to sell the concept of the millage request? Unless the ballot language is so specific, I think they might be kind of angry about that. Like Danny said, you have to think about somebody on a road that's in rough shape. And unless they know that we're going to put $50,000 toward somebody else's road, but we're going to come back and ask them for more money, I don't think they'd mind. I think they'll support the millage. I think they'd accept the higher millage if they know that their road will be fixed. And I guess my comment would be, can we wait on the 50,000 and on this recommendation until after, so that we can take that 50 and put it toward, because I don't know, we plan on starting it this year, like right now?
This is an annual request from the road commission, and basically what this does is it puts us into a much larger bid process that reduces the overall cost.
How much did we do last year?
I think we did $25,000 last year.
Yeah, I was thinking
But we didn't do chip
25,000 or
seal. We just did crack seal, the tar seal. We didn't do chip seal.
And part of what you're saying, Lynn, is true, but people we can't fix all the roads for $50,000.
Right.
We have to fix something. We've got $50,000 available every year for road maintenance. It's just, how do we want to spend that $50,000 this year? It's been budgeted for road maintenance. If you buy into the program that the road committee and Manager Gerard have delivered to us, saying this is an asset management program, it's an overall plan for how we fix the roads, short-term and long-term. Yeah, your road might not be on here, but $50,000 isn't going to fix your road either. And $50,000 is going to allow us to keep a road, add 10 years to its life or 7 years to its life, so that we can come back and fix your road. And I think if the board has adopted that and bought into that comprehensive asset management plan for road repair, that and the other thing is, like you said, you think people will support the millage. I don't think we've ever had people not support a road millage. They get it. I mean, as unfair as it may be when we don't own the roads that we have to pay to fix them, they also know that if we don't do it, it ain't going to happen at all.
And I think if they know that we have 50,000 we've budgeted to do a project, the difference is it's a maintenance project too. And if we stress that with the people that are going to call, that's different than the proposal of the ballot to say, yes, we will fix and repair and repave or reconstruct every road in the township for this millage. I'm just trying to figure out, so the public knows, you know, because I wrestled with this too. I listened to your discussion a couple weeks ago, and I agreed with Danny completely. It just didn't make sense. I'm like, Commerce Drive, you can't be you got to be kidding. But you 50,000 toward a road that's going to take 300,000 to fix, we can't do that. It's not practical to throw 50,000 at something that's going to take 6 times more to do. So if I have to do that sometimes in my hotel. You know, you've got so much money, you just have to figure out the best use of it. And I think if the public knows that we're going to put this 50 on now so that we can get this fixed, it's a prelude to the intent of getting to every road. And if we can explain that and make sure they understand that this is almost like an extra 50,000 we're going to use right now because we did set it aside. But the big project is the millage request.
This is $50,000 that the board approved in the budget last year.
From last year,
to
right.
spend this year,
It's
right.
like a separate project we're not even going to
Just
include in the big
Purely
millage request.
annual road maintenance budget, yeah.
I think they'd agree to it. And then as long as I know that we're going to do both, I could support this
Dave?
without a problem.
Just to comment on Trustee Durant's concerns is part of this program when we set it out before the board and they approved it was before this ever goes to ballot, and I'm suggesting that before the language is even finalized, it's the road committee's intention to have a list year by year what roads will be fixed and what type of repair will be done to those roads, whether it's reconstruction or crack seal or whatever, in a year by year listing. So when the residents of the township are considering the ballot proposal and they go look on the list, they can see where their road is and what year it's going to be done and what type of construction is going to be done. That was the whole intent. And just to put the rest of it in perspective, if you spend $50,000 on the worst roads, ones that are earmarked for reconstruction, you're doing nothing more than pothole repair, which are going to be good for this year, and next year they're going to be requiring pothole repair again. So it's pretty much just throwing $50,000 at it this year, and it's going to require the same amount next year.
Pete?
What it is, that we're investing in this road. Basically, that's what it is. It's going to prolong the life of this road, and then we're going to come back and try to catch the other ones next year and try to save a couple more, but still go and do the reconstruction of it. 50,000, like Dave says, is nothing. It just might as well throw it down the back here, because you're not going to get nothing fixed for it, and you're going to have the same problem. Here, we can invest $50,000 and save some. You're going to extend the life of this thing while we're fixing the other ones. Yes, we're going to have to come back to this one, but maybe we can chip and seal it in another 7-10 years and get another 7 to 10 years. If you watch the graph, it grows, and every time you do some improvement, you knock it up. So it's just like anything else we buy, or you invest in. It's a good investment in what we're trying to accomplish. So.
Motion is second. Is there any other comment? Dan?
I'm not gonna, I just, if somebody that lives on Dyrite Street between Erickson and Ontario comes up to me and says, you know, my section has a Pacer rating of 6 and it needs a chip seal, and the only reason mine isn't getting fixed compared to Commerce Drive, which isn't even residential, is because it doesn't have an emergency route or complete streets. Is that correct? That's gonna be my answer to them?
No, I think what your answer to them would be is that segment of street that's in front of their house only serves them, basically. Commerce Drive serves the entire township. And what we're looking at is a roadway that has a multi-function in terms of being a border road between the residential district and the commercial district, being an emergency route, being a complete street, and serving basically more than just the residents of one street. And I think that, that's a valid point to look at, like the same as we did with Werner. Why did we do Werner? It's a backbone street, basically. Other streets feed to it. People come off of their street to get onto that one to go from point A to point B. It's not a local residential street that serves only the residents that live on that street. It's it's a larger use roadway. And I
Well-
think that's the answer to the residents.
I'd have to disagree with you. I think the reason we did Werner is because the county never finished up Werner. Werner was supposed to be completed all the way through, and we felt that Werner should have been done all the way through. As to the point of, it's been said here many, many times that if we have a survey, everybody says roads, 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 but everybody's roads, roads, roads are not Commerce Drive. Everybody's roads, roads, roads are their roads that are in bad shape, they're potholed, that are falling apart, that do need chip seal. All I'm saying is that I'm going by what Lynn, I'm agreeing with Lynn 100%. When we say, if somebody comes up to me and like I said, on Diorite and says, it lives between Erickson and Ontario, why isn't my road fixed when it has the same pacer rating and it needs a chip seal as Commerce Drive? My only answer is going to be because it's not an emergency route and it's not a complete street.
So what would your solution be for the $50,000 spent?
I don't know what my solution would be for the 50,000. I think it's a catch-22 here. No matter what's going to happen, there is no solution to this thing. Obviously, the only solution is to take the roads and fix them as they come. I understand the reason why we had to come up with the adjusted rating on it because of the emergency route and the complete streets and stuff like that. But tell that to the average citizen that's paying his taxes and is for fixing up roads, it's coming out of his tax money, and now you're going to throw a millage in there that they're going to have to millage, and you're still going to say, gee, sorry, it's not an emergency road or a safe street, so we can't do your road. We're going to do these roads first. So my feeling here is if you got 50,000, was the 50,000 put in there for Commerce Drive, or was the 50,000 put in there to fix the streets that are other streets that need chip seal? If they're going to get a millage pass for Commerce Drive, then that's fine. But you're saying that we'll fix Commerce Drive with the 50,000, but if the millage doesn't pass, then all these other streets here aren't going to get fixed.
If you recall the budget process, the $50,000 is just the annual road maintenance. So it's about maintenance of what we can do with $50,000, which, as you're well aware, isn't a whole heck of a lot.
Well, that's true, but I can see just take the next 3 roads down minus 550, and you have $50,000 there. So I just want to understand where my feeling is coming from this thing. I understand that you have to come up with a solution to figure out which roads but this to me doesn't feel right. The other thing I want to say is the fact that Big Bay Road to the city township line of $64,000, that being the trucking route now, why are we worried about that? Shouldn't that be, if the city's getting all that money for theirs, why can't they do that themselves?
We took Big Bay Road out of that mix. It's probably still on your report.
It's on a report.
But it's out of the mix.
Okay.
We took Big Bay Road is out, and Wright Street from the city line to the target intersection of 492 all the way out to the township line.
The county primaries, basically.
Motion is second to move forward with the crack ceiling not to exceed $50,000. Other comment? Seeing none, motion before you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. Next item on your agenda is consider the Township Hall property acquisition and parking lot expansion. Manager Gerard.
Basically, what you have before you is the purchase agreement and the opinion from Council Zappa regarding the property acquisition that we talked about at your last meeting. This is the information that you were waiting for.
As you are aware, the $75,000 that it was going to cost to actually put the paving down is being used from the proceeds of the loan amount to finance this property. The $200,000 is being financed on a separate agreement, correct, Randy?
Separate mortgage, that's correct.
Mortgage.
The parking lot is basically the finishing part of this project, this phase of the construction project. The Township Hall Community Center was recognized early on with the very first event that we had here that the parking was not going to be adequate. So we have reacquired most of the property that we previously had to the north. That's on a separate mortgage, amortized over 20 years with a 7-year balloon, 3.15% interest. And the parking lot itself, the construction of the parking lot, is $74,000 to $75,000, and that is what remains from the original loan on this facility. So we're financing the $200,000 on a separate mortgage. We have the $74,000 for the parking lot.
Thank you. What we're being asked to do is pass a motion to allow or authorize the supervisor and clerk to execute the purchase agreement for the property from Cornerstone Development
And the financing documents with the financial institution.
to finalize the additional parking that we found is desperately required for our current facility.
Now, this will provide 30 paved additional parking spaces as well as an overflow.
Anyone care to make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is second. Pete, comment?
No comment. It's a good
Lynn?
investment.
I remembered that in some of the description, it says that the grading and stuff will be taken care of because some of that land had to be leveled out and added to, and I
Correct.
was concerned about the stability of it, as was I when we did this building. So are we thinking this is going to be next year? We're
No,
going to let it
that's-
set for a while, or?
No, right now they are compacting. It's being physically
Ready to
compacted,
go?
mechanically compacted, and basically what you will see is that there'll be an area behind the parking lot, basically, that'll be green space. And there will be room at the far end for additional storage if we decide to go that way. But there'll be area between, it'll expand the green area for park use or whatever here with this facility. So you'll see, that's what you're seeing, the dirt being moved there now is expanding it back. It's putting a larger containment, a larger stormwater containment area because of the additional paved area, and also some additional room, basically, for us.
Ernie?
Following the same line of questioning, same direction, that we move forward on this, we have to move our little building, we have the end of the parking lot in that, for our storage for that. That's gonna be X number of dollars, and that,
That's part of this project. It's incorporated in this,
in what dollar amount, the 75,000, or the 200,000, or?
75,000. Yeah, you're talking about the refuse
Yes.
in storage, that's being turned and moved back.
Is there any other buildings gonna be on that property at all?
Likely, there will likely be a building and grounds garage of some sort as we're acquiring equipment.
Which is short-term or long-term from now? Do you have any idea?
I would hope it would be relatively short-term.
That would come forward as a completely separate
Mhm.
project. I think we found as we did this building that in hindsight, we needed to, it would have been a lot smarter for us to have the additional facility or a small attachment for the lawnmower, snow blower, those kind of things out of the way. And, you know, can we make do without it? Yeah, we have a lot of options that we can decide to go in if, I mean, they could have a covered trailer and keep all their equipment in there and have to just go get the trailer and haul it around. I mean, would that make more sense than having a facility there? There's a lot of options that the board could consider at that time.
So you're talking about a balloon payment after 5 years,
7.
7 years? So we're talking about a $30,000 payment a year.
No, it's actually the payment as it's set right now, amortized over 20 years is, over the 20 years is about $13,000 a year. Yeah, payment, principal and interest, a little over 13,000, between 13 and 14, about 13.4 I think it calculated out at. So we will accelerate that as much as we can, just like we're doing with this building, the fire department, and public works. Same thing. We're accelerating those payments. Our target is to be done within that 7 years.
And you could pay it off with the proceeds of the sale of the other facility if you were.
Remember, that is coming into this as soon as we transfer that property. It's paying off part of this facility.
That hadn't come to the board that for any discussion at all yet.
Nope, not as yet.
So I just don't like balloon payment because that's into the future. You have no idea what's gonna happen in that too. So that's,
Beyond that. Mhm.
so that's my problem there, so.
Other comment? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second to authorize the supervisor and clerk to move forward with the purchase agreement, financial documents for the property acquisition and parking lot expansion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes. Next item on your agenda is 9E. Consider the Erie Avenue abandonment second resolution. In your packet, you saw the transmittal to Manager Gerard from Attorney Zappa dated May 28th. As we continue to explore the concept of moving forward with that Erie Avenue abandonment, we've kind of put our plans together for Lions Park to expand the ice rink into a permanent facility. We've got a $100,000 grant from Cliffs Lundeen to help us move that forward with a ice rink warming shack. But one of the sticking points is we kind of need that street abandoned before we can execute a lot of that agreement. When you read this transmittal, it's a question has arisen whether a second resolution authorizing the abandonment is necessary. And on the advice of Attorney Zappa, rather than engage in a protracted debate, it's quicker and easier to simply adopt another resolution, reaffirming our previous resolution to abandon the one-block section of Erie Avenue located between Summit and Cherry Streets.
This is just basically a repeat of the resolution you've already adopted.
Right. Ernie?
Before we get into that, I just have a question. At the last one, do we have to have an emotion as to who signs that document?
The
wasn't
purchase
there.
agreement,
Yes.
the clerk and supervisor were in the
I
motion.
mean, do we have to have it in the motion?
It was in the
Yeah,
motion.
it's in the motion.
So what's the board's pleasure on the Erie Avenue abandonment? Clerk, Terry?
Move to accept the resolution of abandonment.
Second.
Comment?
The resolution will be in the minutes of the meeting as always, as a resolution shall be.
No other comment, Clerk Terry? Ernie?
By sign, does this have to go back down to the Attorney General again to review, or is it
No.
done? We don't-
Well, hopefully this will be done. I think all Roger needs to do, Attorney Zappa needs to do is advise the Assistant Attorney General that this resolution's been adopted and probably send him a copy of it, but I don't think it takes any more than that.
So we can move forward, maybe.
I hope so.
Clerk Terry?
Clerk Rattari is yes. Trustee LaRue?
Yes.
Trustee Pompo?
Yes.
Trustee Truscott?
Yes.
Trustee Durant?
Yes.
Treasurer Johnson?
Yes.
And Supervisor Limata.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
And again, all of these hoops are necessary because it's a platted area.
The next item on your agenda is 10A. Consider the award of Trowbridge Park Phase 2 low-pressure force main sewer extension project. Superintendent Page, if you'd like to approach the podium. While he comes up, you do have the transmittal to the board dated May 30th from Superintendent Page about the award of construction contract. Last May, the Township Board approved the design and construction engineering services for the Trowbridge Park Phase 2 low-pressure force main extension project. The design was completed, but we were not issued a Michigan DEQ construction permit until October 25th, which was too late to begin construction. The project was advertised on May 16th. Bids were opened on May 28th. A bid summary and recommendation for award is attached. I concur with the recommendation to award the construction contract for the Trowbridge Park Phase 2 low-pressure force main extension project to low responsive qualified bidder Overstar Inc. for the total cost of $217,772. Superintendent Page?
Yeah, excuse me, so you can see the bid tabs, there were 2 bids received. Smith Construction was $228,290, and Overstar was $217,772. The consulting engineer reviewed and made the recommendation. There's also the project purchase information cover sheet. Looks like there are actually 2. The correct one would be the one that's totally filled out. Basically, we're going to pay this with cash. and those are all the attachments. During the winter of this past winter, a couple of things happened. One is as a result of the experiences we've been having with the with the severe weather, we've actually changed our specifications for construction of these small diameter force mains. We're basically going to, first of all, they're going to be deeper. They're going to be a different material. And we're going to, instead of open cut, we're going to directional drill the mains as well as the service lines. So hopefully it'll be a longer lived project than we've had so far. Another thing that's happened is we basically have a preliminary design for the whole of Northwest Trowbridge Park, and it's going to be multi-phased. And the first two phases have basically been driven by the demand, and so phase two actually same thing happens. The first phase, we had a person call, say, I desperately need sewer. You know, my septic's failing. What can you do? So it did comply with our overall plan, but in terms of the particular length, that's how we ended up with this length. But over the winter, we've actually expanded the project another about 3 blocks because we had another person beyond the project area with a failure. So I can't say for sure. It'd probably take another 2 phases, or possibly even 1 phase to finish Trowbridge Park. So it's been a long-term need, long-term goal to get that accomplished. It's taking, it takes longer. Obviously, when you're paying for it out of your pocket, you can't do the whole thing at one time. But the advantage is, it's a much easier process. You're able to basically deal with people's needs with, local decision-making and local financing. Not to diminish the fact that the state and federal government is willing to give you basically low-interest loans, but it comes with a lot of requirements. Number one being you got to pay it back, and you got to pay it back like immediately. So basically what we're doing in this case is our existing customers are actually pre-funding a system, and then the people as they connect will actually pay it back with interest. But to make it even more possible, we're offering low interest financing over a long time for both what we call the lateral benefit charge, which is a portion of the main cost, as well as the connection fee that people are, required to pay. So it's the best we can do to meet the needs, and we're fortunate, that we have, competent contractors locally that can be able to construct it for us.
Questions for Kirk? Dan?
If I remember right, this is a section that ran from Cherry Street, I believe, up to the past center to the lift station. Is that
right? Basically, this particular phase is going to start at the lift station, head east on Center Street, south on Vandenboom to the creek. Phase 2 went from the south to the creek, north to the creek. Then north on Vandenboom to Norwood Street, and then the short blocks west of Vandenboom up to Norwood. And the part that we're adding is basically east on Norwood, about another 3 blocks. So that'll leave basically our original intent was to do Center Street first, but again, like I said, it was based on, we didn't have anybody on Center Street pounding the door saying we want sewer. So that'll probably be phase 2. Huron Street and Center would probably be the final phase.
so? This will be going basically all the way down Vandenboom, and then
Not all the way.
Not all the way,
As far
but
north
then
as
Norwood.
Norwood,
but
which is,
Center and Huron wouldn't be. We'd be going the other ones, but not Center and Huron. Is that what you're saying? For instance,
right.
Bernie?
A couple questions. As far as financing, as these individuals hook up in that, they will be paying X number of dollars.
Correct, yes.
So, and that's all been.
And I haven't recalculated based on this extension and based on, you know, the new estimates, but it was gonna, and it's gonna vary based on assessable frontage. But the average of the original estimate that I did last year was roughly $10,000 over 20 years at 1.5%. So it works out to get your permit is going to cost you like basically the first month's or the first year's annual principal, which is roughly $500.
So they can either do it over a number of years or pay it up front, however. they
That's
want to do
certainly an option. I mean, they can pay the whole thing or.
it. Now, the other question on doing this is, are the roads also included in this? If you're gonna dig up the streets and that?
No. The intent here is to, like I said, it's going to be directionally drilled, okay, 8 feet deep. And we have the flexibility to move. We're going to have structures, you know, we're going to have cleanouts, air relief valves, and just valves that are spaced out. But there's some flexibility in terms of we get to a point, you know, somebody's tree's in the way or whatever, you know, we can adjust. We might have some issues with drilling the laterals, because the right-of-way is only like 60 feet, okay? The main's gonna be roughly 10 feet in from one side of the right-of-way. So basically, we got a 60-foot or 50 feet area, but to drill, you gotta have a hole in each end. So we may, you know, have to be on actually private property, which we're gonna have to actually have easements anyway, because when they connect, the grinder is actually on their property, so, and we have to have an easement anyway, so.
But I guess in answer to the question, it's not like the old style construction where you rip the road up, put it in. This will be
Right.
directionally bored, so the road surface itself won't be disturbed.
Right, I guess I didn't completely finish. What I started to say was, so you have a hole on either side. So the hole has to be deep enough so that, you know, we may lose an edge of pavement or something like that, so. But in general, no. The intent is not to disturb, and not just roads, but any surface area.
Other questions? Pete?
Are you gonna do anything with the drainage, or, I mean, the backup one, it's all right if you cut up the road, you know, it'd be all right to cut the road and patch it for us when you're doing that, but
I'm not saying that won't happen
I
at
have real
all, but-
concerns about the boring
Sure.
that we have,
Yep.
and also the drainage. Are we doing anything with the drainage when you're going down the side of the road, or?
Not as part of this project, because, again, we're not changing the surface, you know, other than digging holes periodically.
Are they doing anything different with boring than they did before, Kurt,
Before,
on the other projects that they had?
no, we've drilled this, actually, our water project, we drilled some, actually, quite a bit of large diameter HCP for long distances. And phase one, actually, we did drill because we had a creek crossing. But that was just kind of a short, and
You know, when we
actually,
did the
now,
sewer job, the borings didn't hold up, because I can tell you, we got a bump on every crossing we had.
you mean the open cut didn't hold up?
Oh, underneath. We got, you know, like on Huron Street, you can see where.
We didn't have any drilling on
Did you
Huron
go on the
Street.
top, or did you go bore underneath?
That was all open cut,
Was it?
Yeah.
yeah. No, we've
Huron
only
was.
actually just started doing this in recent years.
Okay, I just concerned about that, because I don't wanna.
Yeah, there's a fact, I mean,
If
if
you
you
could put a
open
little
cut.
blacktop on top a little bit if you want.
And actually, now that we're talking about that, a lot of the winter problems we've had, severe weather problems, have been with these pressure laterals, okay, on Fair Avenue, which is a pretty new street. But in order to correct the problem, I'm gonna dig up the laterals, open cut, replace the laterals, and insulate. And that's going to be, you know, numerous patches up and down Fair Avenue, which is like a major street.
Yeah.
But no matter how great a job is done, it's never the same. It's not gonna be the same.
Yeah. Now, what will be happening, though, with the road the road facilities plan, basically, that you've adopted, we'll be working with Kirk on that, so some of those streets will be covered by Public Works to some extent, if there's replacement of valves, if there's replacement of pipes or whatever along with it. So we're trying to coordinate all of that together so we get it all done at once, because we don't want to go back and cut the roads. I mean, you don't, once you fix the road, you don't want to go back and disturb the surface again.
Yeah, and that's basically for water. We have been doing that for township reconstruction projects. If it's in an area where we have water mains, we've basically been replacing hydrants and valves. Because they don't last as long as the main does, so.
Other comments? I know that I'm well aware of a resident in that area who, with this extreme weather, and we've got a lot of saturated ground out in northwest Trowbridge, as everybody knows, but whose drain field froze this winter in February and didn't thaw out until a couple of weeks ago, making their, they had to have their septic tank pumped out once a week in order to get through the winter. And it's just one of those things where we know we've got an issue out there and we have to attack it. And it'd be great if we could do it all at once, but if we can do it and be responsive to help the people out who have to have something done, because otherwise we've got people, what do we try to put in engineered systems at the cost of up to $20,000 or $30,000 versus being able to hook up to the sewer, which is the right thing to do for the long term. And I know that it's hard to talk to a resident who is in that situation where they you know, and through no fault of their own, it's just that the effective life of that septic system and drain field has reached its end. And a lot of it is with the ground is just so saturated, there's nowhere for it to go, and it'll just continue, and it's going to happen to more folks as we move on, unfortunately. But you know, being able to put these things in here so that we can give people the option, so that, you know, when they call Superintendent Page freaking out, that at least you can say, I understand I can't do anything for you in February, but, you know, there's light at the end of the tunnel. There's hope on the horizon that we'll be able to do something for you, I think is a big deal. And it does show we're being responsive. And I know there's some questions about the financing of it, but I think giving people the option to pay it over long term, so that no matter what your situation, we can give you an affordable option for being able to hook up to the sewer to meet your basic needs without bankrupting you as well, I think is important. And it puts more people on the system, which is always good for us in the long term of paying for the system and improvements as
Right.
we move forward.
So they'll not only pay for their system, but they'll also be paying, for example, for the wastewater treatment bond
Right.
as well.
There's no other questions. We do have his request, and it's to authorize Superintendent Page to move forward with executing the agreement with Overstar Inc. not to exceed $217,772. And I would entertain that motion.
So moved.
Support.
Motion and support. Other questions or comments?
Could I make a comment?
Yep.
That's one of the reasons I changed the purchase information cover sheet. I put, the contract is for a fixed amount, but any construction project, there are going to be changes. So that's why I put the estimated cost.
Okay.
So the contract is for 217, but, you know, that might not necessarily be the final cost.
You don't like the not to exceed wording? Is that what you're trying to get through to
Correct.
me?
Yes.
Any change orders would,
Any
any change
would come
orders
for
would
us
come
for
back to the board
approval.
anyway.
Okay.
You still can go with the dollar amount and change order.
With the understanding
That
that
is
we
the
may-
contract amount, sure.
Okay. Motion and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes. Thank you, Kirk.
Thank you.
Next
Dennis,
item.
Excuse me, just a sidebar. I'm thinking, since this project was already discussed, it could have been an old business and not had Superintendent Page stay here so long.
It
Maybe
could have
had
been
it
what?
On the old business, unfinished business.
Could have.
I know he loves sitting here watching our move.
But then he would have missed out on some other things that he was really excited to hear about. plus that way tomorrow at the staff meeting, he's able to tell everybody what the board talked about during the meeting, and then I don't have to go to the staff meeting, so it really
Okay.
serves two purposes.
Well, you want them here, that's why.
I would have pushed him to the end, but the next item on your agenda is 10B, consider the Public Works Center DDR, Design Development Revision. You do have a transmittal dated May 29th to Manager Gerard from Mr. Clark. And Mr. Clark, I'll just turn that over to you to explain to the board.
First of all, I'd like to point out, this DDR may need to be addressed by Mr. Page also, so that's why he needed to stay, because
Okay.
some of these revisions were approved by his request in conjunction with Randy Gerard. Just to summarize, there are 5 items that are addressed to deal with some of the issues of finalizing the Public Works building contract. They are itemized as the grinder hoist beam addition. There was an error in the the architect's plans, where there was a beam left out in some of the specifications when it was sent out for bid. This is a beam that actually assists the staff move the beam in the grinder room. It's a beam that holds weight, and it carries it, and they hook it on, and it hoists it over to the workbench so they can work on it. There was some changes to the front of the building where we reduced, there was the metal siding on there wasn't something that is a standard product anymore. It was built, I think, in the 70s originally, and we needed to get some additional metal siding work done. And then there isn't a reduction to the contract about something we discussed briefly earlier about the handicap ramp inside the building. When we went from concrete and steel and we went with wood, it ended up being cheaper, so that is a credit back to the contract. And then we added some pipe bollards, and those are on the exterior corner of the building to the rear, and that is to prevent any collision damage with vehicles turning around the back or backing around the rear corner of the building to protect the structure. And then there was some additional conduit that was needed from the building back to the communication tower building for the technology requirements for the building, a lot of the wireless communication systems. They needed to have power and some communication wires run through that conduit. So the total of those 5 items comes to $5,040.92.
And we need a motion to approve the design development revisions.
I'll
Correct,
make the
Randy?
motion.
Yes. That's correct.
Okay. Lynn?
I'll make the motion, excuse me.
Second.
Motion is second. Any comment? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. The next item is 10C, consider progress billing number 18 for Public Works number 7, depending on how you like to think of it. Again, in your packet, you do have a transmittal dated May 29th from Mr. Clark to Manager Gerard. I'm not going to read the thing, but the gist of it is the billings are broken down on the attached sheet, and the total amount due for number 17 is $213,101.52. Anything you need to add, Jim?
I just want to point out that there's going to be about $95,000 outstanding to close out the job. A majority of that is retainage. So as soon as we get all of the most of that work is related to the outside and some billings that we haven't received from some of the subcontractors, mechanical, electrical, those types of things for their final billings. But the majority of it is now billed.
When will we be completely done, drove away, done, handed the keys over, landscape works done?
I'm planning to have that done by the next 30-day billing cycle, so it would be a month from today.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Clark? Seeing none, we would be looking for a motion to approve progress payment, the amount of $213,101.52.
So moved.
There's
Support.
motion and support. If there's no other comments, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes. We can pay, Jim.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
You're welcome. Thank you for coming in.
Could have put you at the end.
Any board members that would like to go and take a look at the facility, it's essentially finished at this point, interior. If anybody would like to see that and just coordinate with,
Is there anyone who
Manager
hasn't been
Page.
in to do a walkthrough yet?
Yeah, I haven't.
Been a while since I
And
have.
I've got a key. I'd be happy to walk anybody through that wants to go. If you just want to call me and,
We need a hard hat?
no. Not if you go with me. It's, I think you'll be happy with the facility. I think the layout was really smart and well thought out, well planned. The workmanship inside and out is very professional looking. I can't imagine how our productivity can't improve with the layout of that facility, and I would be very surprised if it did not.
just one quick comment that I wanted to make earlier, in an earlier discussion, Mr. Clark had made a reference to the issue with the lockers being too small that were in this facility. We are going to retain those lockers for the warming hut at the ice rink.
It's just a bank of lockers, and when you take the tour, if those haven't been changed out yet, you'll see why they don't work for the Public Works crew with the size of the lockers. Would work fine for a warming facility or something like that, but I think you'd be hard pressed to get a pair of boots or coveralls and anything else in there all at one time. The next item on our agenda is 10D. Consider the Northern Michigan Public Service Academy annual dues. You do have the transmittal. They came to me dated May 19th. Again, talking about dues are based on $20 per full-time employee. And then it talks about, the seminar fees are $25 per member instead of $75 per non-member. One of the benefits you get is being a member of the Northern Michigan Public Service Academy. We have had many board members take advantage of the trainings offered through the Northern Michigan Public Service Academy. They're local, they're timely, and have been well received. You'll also notice they do have an updated email list to submit if anyone is not getting regular communications in their township email from the Northern Michigan Public Service Academy. Let us know, and we'll provide that information as well. They're also asking suggestions for future seminars, and anyone who would like to make those suggestions may do so and submit those directly to the Northern Michigan Public Service Academy. We don't have to do it just one from the township. Anyone can do it. They are asking for consideration of payment of those annual dues, and again, it would be $25 times however many employees we have now. Is it 17, Randy? Or?
Yes, actually, it's $15 because there's a 25% discount, so it's about $255 for us.
Okay, which we save if people go to if we have a few people go to one of their seminars. We basically saved enough money on that to pay the dues.
Correct. And this comes out of the general services account in the general fund budget.
Board's pleasure.
I'll make a motion, we pay the dues, $250.
Or
We have motion and support. Any other comments? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. Next item on your agenda is 10E, consider payment of the Michigan Township Association dues. Basically the same spiel I just gave, other than for a different organization.
And from a different line item, this comes out of the board dues and subscriptions line item.
Larry Merrill did a pretty good job of a full page of propaganda on why Michigan Township Association is important to all of us. You know, I mean, the Michigan Township Association is what it is. We certainly look to them for a lot of help, and we receive a lot of help from them, whether it's from legal questions or procedural questions. They've always been quick to respond. We can do our salary surveys. We can do many things. The portals that they have for all board members to be able to jump on and look up information. They provide us with an absolute wealth of knowledge, as well as the ongoing education, in addition to the annual one held in January, which every member of this board attended this year. They have, as our consent agenda showed, On the Road series, where they go throughout the state and hold different educational sessions, including up in the UP. There's one coming up in Marquette, and again later in August, I believe, which is great because usually we're used to being the ones who have to travel. It's nice when they're willing to take the show on the road and come up and provide us with the information here. The dues for this year, including a voluntary $118 contribution to the Legal Defense Fund, would come to $4,051.20. What's the board's pleasure?
Also move we pay the dues.
Second.
Any board member comment?
Why would we not want to support them? Excuse me. I don't
think-
always agree with what they do, but they're a phenomenal organization, and they've helped this township a lot.
Other comment? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second to approve the dues for Michigan Townships Association, the amount of $4,051.20. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. The next item on your agenda is 10F. Consider the purchase of 2 replacement vehicles for Public Works. Parenthetically noted that they were already budgeted for, as you are aware. You do have a transmittal dated May 30th to the Marquette Township Board from Superintendent Page. Requests for proposals were solicited from local dealers by Manager Gerard for 2 new 2015 3/4-ton 4x4 extended cab short box maintenance utility pickup trucks with various township required options. 3 proposals were received. The results are tabulated below. After reviewing the proposals, determined that they comply with our specifications. Fox Motors of Marquette provided the low responsive proposal of $54,762. However, the lead time for delivery was 12 weeks. They requested that they would search for 2014 models of the same truck. They were able to find the 2 vehicles in 2 different states, and the cost would come down to $53,496.39. Kirk recommends purchase of the specified vehicles from Fox Motors Marquette for the cost of $53,496.39, and further recommend that the expenditure be equally divided between the water and wastewater funds. The vehicles will be used to replace a 2002 and a 2003 half-ton pickup, which will be disposed of by auction. Superintendent Page, anything I need to add?
No, I mean, it's a pretty much a straight-up deal replacing our 2 oldest vehicles. The only comment I have would be, they will be disposed of, the old trucks, not necessarily by auction, but by some sort of sale.
Whatever means gives us the largest return.
Right.
By what?
Whatever means gives us the largest return. We will put it out for proposals. The 2002 and the 2003 General Motors half-ton pickups are desirable for their engines, transmissions, and frames to folks that build mudding trucks, those kinds of things. So we're going to put it out for proposals to see if that draws any interest. The engines and transmissions are good on these vehicles. The bodies have basically rotted off. You know, you can literally see through the floorboards. But if that fails, you know, whatever scrap or whatever, the highest return we get is what we'll do.
They are both parked out in the parking lot for your viewing pleasure, if you'd like
wish.
to take a look at why we're replacing them. Ernie?
I just have a question. When I'm looking through the documentation from Kurt Page, we're replacing half-ton pickups with 3/4-ton 4x4 extended cabs. why are we going to the larger ones? Because that's, in the long run, is gonna cost us more money in operations than that too, so.
It actually saves us. The 3/4-ton truck is much more durable than the half-ton truck for the work that we do. They should have been 3/4-ton trucks, and that's been our history. We have replaced with 3/4-ton or 1-ton trucks when we've replaced the most recent vehicles. They just get better service out of them,
Why the extended cab? Do we really need that?
because that's pretty much how they come. You know, some of the materials that they carry need to be kept inside the cab. These are not the big cabs; they're just the small extended cab. It's the small half door, basically, in the back, primarily for room in the cab. The standard cab doesn't allow much room for anything in terms of equipment that needs to be kept out of the freezing.
Right, this is basically something that we have been getting in recent years. It works better for us to have some indoor storage. I mean, everything just can't go in the back toolbox.
Yeah. Do they cost a little more? Yes, they do. They cost more than a standard cab, but in the long run, it's better.
Ernie, go ahead.
Along with that, I've been around the township long enough. I've seen the trucks parked different places and looked at them and seen what's there and that. And I get a little concerned when I start looking at the trucks, what's on the back end and what's in the front. I think we have to do a better job of monitoring how they're maintained, both inside and outside. If we're going to pay this kind of dollars for them and that, and we have to have a review at a point in time to see what we've got and that, because I look at my own vehicle and if I don't keep it up, there's someone at the house that's going to let me know real quick and that too. So I think we have to look at the same thing and that. And I know they're work trucks and that, but I also know that they have to take some, how do I want to put it? Care of it.
Yeah.
And that.
And we will. In the new facility, as you'll remember, we built into the new facility capability to do that we've not had in the past. So they will be maintained inside. They won't be sitting outside in the weather like they have been in the past. We will have a maintenance schedule that we'll be following. I've been working with Trustee LaRue in terms of some of the asset management things that he's been involved in with fleet previously, and we'll be getting on that kind of a schedule.
I think the other thing is the software programs that we have in the BSA, the new ones we'll be able to do some tracking as to the cost factors on those trucks as we move forward. What is it costing for those trucks to operate in that?
True.
So we have a better idea in that too in the long run.
And we'll be doing the same thing with the building and grounds vehicles. They'll be on the same type of a basis.
I asked Manager Gerard earlier today to develop a policy and protocol for asset management for our fleet vehicles and share it with the board, because I think as we're replacing these vehicles, and I know that Trustee LaRue has brought it up many times, that we get it that they're work vehicles. We get what they have to go through. They're going to get banged up once in a while. But I think that it also means that we have to have some policy or procedure in place that those types of things are noted, they're logged. If we see a tailgate with a V out of it or something, we should be able to know as a township who was driving it, what happened, what day that it occurred. And like Pete had talked about with fleet vehicles in prior positions, to take care of, even as rust spots start to develop, we can take care of that with that indoor facility now, where you can sand it and paint it down with some touch-up paint and try to make those assets last as long as they can. You know, I get it that they're work trucks. My dad was a residential builder. His trucks, he considered a tool that wore out every 3 years. And they did, I assure you. When he was done, they were wore out. If you look at the vehicles that we have out in the parking lot, they're wore out. They were well used and pretty well used up. But I think that having been said, I'd be interested to see Manager Gerard take a more hands-on approach. And of course, that's going to fall on Superintendent Page to implement as well. But I think the board would be very interested in seeing something in place as we move forward. Pete?
I think a lot of that is, it just goes that we care about what it looks like out there. We want the employees to worry about it and take care of it. And you know, if something happens, let's get it fixed right away, you know, and not to leave it go. And then all of a sudden you got 2 dents and a little rusty here, rusty there. But you know, the appearance of that out in our township, I mean, we're always talking, we're going, a brand-new fire department, we got a brand-new community building, office. Well, our vehicles should be, they're the township out on the road. So if you look at it that way, and if we have the people who are driving take better care of them, and just say, every week you have to make sure this is clean, your dash has to be clean, you know. I think it makes them feel better about driving their trucks, and it makes us, you know, cost-effective to have them fix them up.
And you will see something a little different on these trucks than you've seen on the other trucks. We are doing some wrapping. You've seen the vehicles that have the wrapping on them. We're doing some of that wrapping on these on the vulnerable areas to avoid some of the stone chips, the nicks, the scratches, and things such as that on the surface that ultimately lead to rust. So we're doing some of those applications as well on these trucks.
Ernie?
Are we gonna do any undercoating on those trucks?
Yes, we're going to be doing things like rhino lining in the beds and those
Underneath
kinds of
because
things.
of it being out there a lot.
Most likely, we haven't even talked about that as yet, but that's probably one of the things we'll be doing. That wasn't on the specs. We didn't have undercoating on the specs, but that's certainly something that, you know, we should consider on these newer trucks.
Dan?
2 comments. One, unlike your father, the truck belonged to him. These trucks belong to the township, and therefore the residents are paying for these trucks. So I think that's very important that accountability comes into play here for any damage to the vehicles. Second, I wish, I'm kind of not disappointed, but I wish I would have seen, when it came time for a budget this year, under the narrative, if we're spending $55,000 under capital, I would have liked to have seen that in the narrative, not just have this pop up just now. I think that's a big chunk of cash that we probably should have known ahead of time you were going to go for.
Right, that's in the replacement and improvement schedule. This is a replacement.
But it wasn't
it's not
specifically
an
under,
improvement.
you didn't specifically under the narrative say, well, I'm going to purchase 2 new trucks this year.
I think so.
Yeah, we did, actually.
Yeah,
But
I thought so.
I think also, Dan, I think that just highlights that capital improvements program that we're talking about, changes that will be a lot easier for us as board members to track. Ernie?
Last comment, now with us being able to have occupancy of the new building 30 days to 45 days out, we should be able to have those trucks in there at night and no taking home except those that are necessary, so.
Yeah, it'll be before that. The 30 days is totally completed. They're actually in the building now.
So you can start that process of those that are,
Mhm.
the individuals on call, takes the truck, everything else is in the building.
Yep. The only ones that would be out are those that are on call.
for the garage portion storage, we are waiting until that grinding is done.
Yeah, the
which
cement
hasn't been
floor.
scheduled yet. I mean, it's great that the contractors offered to move stuff in and out for us, but basically we gotta move in and out every day, you know, so.
Right.
Okay.
Lynn?
I was just gonna reiterate everything everybody said. Those are the same points I came up with. That's the biggest issue I've heard, probably, other than utility rates, is the trucks. The public is just disgusted with the way they look and the trash in the back, and I've kept assuring them, once the building's built and they're gonna be inside, we can wash them and keep them up. But that, I've heard that from I don't know how many people, year after year after year. They're just disgusted with it, so I'm.
And the
sure
other
they'll
good
be-
thing is there will be, there won't be any need to carry the things around in the bed any longer because we'll now have somewhere to put it.
True.
Well, we're certainly happy to contribute to the mental health of the community.
Good one, Kirk. Clerk Gutari?
I move to accept the proposal from Fox Motors for the not-to-exceed cost of $53,496.39 to be split amongst the water and wastewater fund.
Support.
Motion and support. If there's no other comment, all those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? That motion passes.
Just
Ernie?
one comment, the insignia that you put on the trucks, is it gonna get any better? It's difficult to read at times.
Yeah, it's the newer logo, similar to what we have in the sheriff's car. It'll still be in the water droplet basically, but it will be that newer logo, and it'll be larger.
Easier to read.
It'll be larger. The trucks with the wrap will be easily recognizable as township trucks.
They're going to take the board picture, the most recent board picture, and that's going to be the wrapper on the back of the truck.
Who's gonna be sitting in these seats in a week? I'll take this one.
Thank you, Kirk. Appreciate it. Next item on your agenda is 10G, Manager's Report. You do have the written transmittal from Randy. Anything else you'd like to add, Randy?
Just a couple of comments, because there are some follow-ups on here from discussion at the last meeting, mainly on the winter sand removal. I don't know if the board members have any questions on that. The road commission basically would be in position to assist us in that, and roughly it's going to cost about $65 an hour, which is their standard cost for manpower and equipment. If we choose to do that, they would be willing to engage in an agreement, a specific agreement for us. I already mentioned the tax challenge response. We have filed, as of today, we filed the application for leave to appeal to the Supreme Court. Now it's up to the Supreme Court, in reading that appeal brief, that as to whether or not they'll accept the case. We are hopeful that they will. The Supreme Court has accepted several taxation cases recently. They've been different aspects of taxation, not specifically on this point, but they have been, it appears to be interested in the issue of taxation in the state, so we're hopeful that they will accept it. Winter freeze, Kirk just left, I was going to ask him the question. As of last week, we still had 4 laterals that needed to be dug up and 1 section of sewer main that was still frozen. They were going to be finishing those last week, and I'm presuming that they did. So we should not be pumping grinder pumps much longer, maybe for this remaining week, to get it finished off. We have submitted everything, including the damage to the roads, Fair Avenue and some of the other roads, in our calculations for reimbursement from FEMA. We had to make a $13 million total of all the communities around. We believe we've done that. There was a request yesterday, in fact. The request days are kind of running together, but the request came yesterday from County Emergency Services that they want, the feds want more detail. So Kirk is going back and supplying additional detail. They wanted more specificity in terms of just exactly what broke, how it broke, why it broke, all those kinds of things. So they are getting to the point, I think, of being almost ready to make a decision in terms of what they're doing in terms of funding. Let's see what else was on there. Anything else big? North Star Academy, we did receive a general invitation to the graduation of North Star Academy. It's on June the 11th. They will be having on the 11th their field day, their last day of school. They will be doing that here in our community room. They did do their prom in the community room. So they've been very pleased with the facility that we have here. Just one last item. Those of you may remember Mike Beck, who has come to the board several times to make comments about bike pathways and things such as that, primarily on 550. Mike has joined us as an intern through Northern Michigan University, and he is working with Jason. He's completing his bachelor's degree in environmental science and sustainability, primarily with recreation assets and things such as that. So he is working on an internship now. You'll see him in the office periodically assisting Jason on some of the recreational issues and the sustainability issues and planning that he's been working on. So that will be short term. It's a classroom internship. So just so you know, next time you see him in there, say hi. And you'll probably be seeing him here at board meetings as well.
Thanks, Randy. Questions for Manager
On the
Gerard?
tax tribunal response yet, can you tell me what they're referring to on the unpublished to published?
Yes, the Court of Appeals, when the Court of Appeals hears a case, and John may be familiar with this as well, but when the Court of Appeals hears a case, they have the option of reporting or not reporting it. If they do not report the case publicly, it's not precedent setting. It's not a precedential case. If they publish the case, then it's precedent unless it's overturned. So as it sits right now, they chose specifically not to publish it because I believe, this is my opinion, they wanted to give the two parties the option to determine whether they would accept it or move it on to the Supreme Court. They did not want to make it a precedent to apply statewide. So the opposing counsel, Mr. Shapiro, has filed a motion with the court to change their position and convert it to a published opinion. Obviously, he wants to do that. He wants it to apply statewide to all of the pending cases that he's involved in, makes his life much easier and his pocketbook much heavier. So we have also submitted an opposition brief telling the Court of Appeals that we are pursuing it to the Supreme Court.
Other questions for Manager Gerard Lynn?
I was confused a little bit with the winter sand removal, and I'm ready to make a motion to authorize you to go forward if that's the case. But if 1 minute says that they're not capable of doing it, the next minute says they can.
Well, here's
Buy equipment, or-
the issue is that if we want them to do our pedestrian ways, they do not have a piece of equipment to do pedestrian ways. If you'll recall, when you saw them doing the safety strip along US 41, they had a tractor-mounted broom that they were pushing the sand into a loader that was then dumping it into a truck. So that's what they would have to do, and that's what they're saying. They're really not capable of doing that. But if we wanted to do that in conjunction with a road, as a for instance, when they're doing Werner Street, to combine it with that, that's what they're saying. We can do that. They will do all of the township streets eventually, because we're on that rotating schedule. They will do that. And as they do that, they'll also do the pedestrian ways on the side. But if we want it done sooner, they'll charge us $60 an hour basically to do that.
We
Like
do
on an
want it done
individual.
sooner, don't we? I mean, that was kind of our point.
Yeah.
Yeah, if they're doing it already, we don't care.
Right.
Well, my question, I guess, would be is what is their plan on how to do this? Are they just going to rent a sweeper and sweep it into the street so that the sander picks it up? Or are they going to be charging us $60 an hour for them to do the street, basically, which would take a lot longer than
Yes.
just getting a broom to
What-
sweep it into the street?
What they're in essence saying is if we want them to come forward here earlier, and we want to do that on a contract, they will bring their equipment to do it. They'll do the street and the sidewalk at the same time and charge us for it.
Is there anybody besides them that has the equipment to do that? The city does,
Yes,
don't they?
there are, but the board specifically asked me to talk to the road commission about forming a contract, and we have talked with there are 2 other vendors in the township that have equipment. One has a better piece of equipment than the other, that could do this work as well.
We don't have prices? We haven't really talked to them?
We have estimates, yeah. They're for the Werner Street walkway, for the County Road 492 walkway, $1,500 maximum, up to $1,500, depending on hours.
Just to
Mobilization,
do it
moving
one
the
time?
equipment there, just to do it the one time. What the board was talking about was a continuing contract year after year with the road commission, as opposed to the sporadic once in a while. Now, we are still looking, we still are talking with an individual that has a piece of equipment available that we would be able to do the sidewalk, but then you run into the issue of we now have 2 staff members involved in brooming, sweeping it into the roadway, then scooping it up out of the roadway, those kinds of things, plus the dust factor. So it's not, what we would have would not be a Vactor. It would not be the vacuum type, which one of the vendors in the township does have.
So when would we know when you said you're in the process of talking to that vendor?
We have, yeah. I have spoken with that vendor, but the board wanted me to report back at this meeting, so I haven't done anything. So
Okay.
those are your options,
We'll
to
get
do
some
something
more.
with the road commission or to do something this year with the other vendor.
I think the board just is looking for a permanent solution to
Yeah.
Get it
clean
done.
every year.
Yep.
And who does it, I don't think we care. The most,
Yeah, the-
cost-effective way to make it happen annually is what we're.
Right.
That's
The
what
road
the
commission
residents are
will do
asking
it on their rotating basis, but they won't get to us until at least August.
Pete,
Now, if they come and do it now, and we pay them $60 an hour, are they gonna do all our streets?
So we would identify what we wanted done.
Okay, but they'll still
To
be
do
back
all-
in August?
To do all of our streets would be $8,400.
Okay, but will they be back in August and do all the streets?
Yes. They'll come back on our regular schedule. We're talking about something outside of the regular
Exactly.
schedule.
Well, I'm just wondering, as long as they're planning on coming back in August to do the sweeping of the streets again,
But that $60 an hour would be for each piece of equipment.
Right.
So, with 2 pieces of equipment, it's gonna be $120 an hour.
Dan?
Well, that's where I was just going to go on. How much is it going to cost us by having the county do it? I guess it drives me crazy to have us do stuff that we're paying our taxes to the county to do, so we're basically double paying to have something done, and that bothers me.
Yeah, and it bothers some residents as well.
Well, yeah, That's just my thought.
My suggestion would be, what the issue was the walkways. And my suggestion would be to contract that separately this year.
Clerk Patari.
Yeah, I'm looking at the minutes of the last meeting. The motion was to direct staff to get estimates to sweep the pedestrian path of Warner and US. And I think you've done that with about $1,500, so I'd be willing to make that motion to have the manager authorize or direct staff to get that swept for not to exceed $2,000.
And that was actually for the Warner and the County Road 492 pathways,
I'll
with
second
the
that.
crossover on the highway.
We have motion and a second. Board member comment? Ernie?
I think by doing this is fine. I can see the benefits for this. Then I go back to the gentleman at the beginning of here sitting at the podium. He's got a problem there. So I think
We have a much
someone's
bigger,
going to have to address it, and with the county saying it's his problem, which I don't agree in that, but how we're going to address that, that's another question.
there is a much larger problem, and that is that there is no containment on the side of the roadways in Trowbridge, in particular Trowbridge, to keep the sand from filling up the drainage. And the road commission, I don't think the road commission said it's your problem in those words as much as to saying we can't get to it. There isn't anything we can do about it. We don't have the manpower, we don't have the equipment.
But I think we should follow up anyway, just.
Oh, I will follow up with him, but what we're talking about here won't solve his problem. He's talking about a plug drain. And what he's talking about is exactly after the last meeting, Treasurer Johnson pointed out to me there was water running down the roadway. That is what he's talking about, and it is coming out of that empty lot. It's groundwater, basically, is what it is.
I was told that the
Yeah,
next day.
it's the melt. I went and looked at it that night, and if you put a light on it, you can see that there's a pipe coming out of the ground, and it was the thaw coming out of that hillside.
Other questions for Manager Gerard? Randy, do you know when Duke Life Point's going to make their announcement that they're moving to the township?
I was hoping that was going to be today, but we didn't hear from them.
Is it true that Red Lobster is being converted to a Olive Garden?
That's news to me. I can tell you that Red Lobster franchise has been sold by Darden Stores to another franchise, so I don't think the issue any longer is competition.
I'm just following up on some questions that I hear.
Well, and realistically, you know,
Answer.
so people watching the broadcast will know. I mean, it's not a false rumor. Olive Garden has been looking here for a long time, and the issue is that Olive Garden and Red Lobster were both owned by the same parent company, and they had to be a certain distance apart, and they had to be a large enough distance to be able to accommodate the parking. And they were not able to find one close, and that's why they've not been here. Now, with the sale of Red Lobster to a different corporation, that may no longer be an issue.
We have a motion and a second on the table to
I don't-
direct staff to get Warner and US 41 streets not to exceed $2,000. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? And, sorry, 492.
And just finalizing that comment,
Passes.
so far as I know, Duke Life Point has not proposed including Olive Garden.
Just checking.
That was a nice letter, Dennis, so that was good.
Thanks.
Now, we did expect, a decision to be made somewhere towards the end of May, early June, from the standpoint of the site selection committee, and the sites that they've been investigating here in the area, and we've so far not heard anything from them.
Great.
To me, if they come here, great. If not, I think we're in a win-win situation no matter what happens in that too. So if they come here, fine.
Dan?
Well, I'll run the questions if everybody's been asking. The gas station. I did see where they did put a
Working on
a
it.
request for quote to build the convenience store.
Well, we have uncharacteristically not heard anything from the tribe recently. I don't know if any of you caught it in some of the Gongwer reports that have recently come out about the Supreme Court's decision in the Bay Mills case.
Oh, yeah.
That may have an impact on what their plans may be, and it may be possibly changing slightly. But we had, Jason and I had expected that they would be back in building by now. Jason was trying to reach their spokesperson, and so far we've not had a response back.
It's been interesting because a case was decided in the Supreme Court and it was pushed out about with Bay Mills Indian community and whether they have the right to open a casino on land that's 90 miles away from their tribal land. Supreme Court ruled that as a sovereign nation, they can build a casino wherever they damn well want to.
Yep.
And so will that change the Keweenaw Bay Indian community's location of where they're going? That remains to be seen. We did reach out, like Randy said. We haven't heard anything. We'll reach out again and see if there's been any change in plans. And we thought all systems were go when they finished off last year. It sure
Yeah.
appeared to be. So
I would suspect they'll go forward with the gas station, but I think their focus on the Nagani Township site for a casino may be renewed as a result of that
you
Supreme
may be
Court
able to have
decision.
gas and slots in Marquette Township. Just saying.
They did advertise for another engineering firm and for
They did.
proposals and
Yep, they
everything
did.
else, so-
They did.
And maybe with the change of the tribal council and everything else, things have changed a lot up there.
There have been some changes in the tribal council. There have been some philosophical changes, but they have invested a substantial amount of money in that property already, and I would be surprised if they didn't go forward at some point. As you may have noticed, as of today, the range of gasoline prices in Marquette is between $3.60 and $3.79 a gallon. 384, I'm sorry, that's right, 384, I just saw a change. So it's gone up 24 cents in the last 2-3 days.
If there's nothing else, we'll close the manager's report, move to public comment. Seeing none. Additional comments from board members? Pete?
Quickly, had some good comments on our community center, people who have rented it out. They're really happy about it. What a nice facility we have, but the parking was a little problem, but that's all right. Remember the bike race this coming Saturday? If you live on 492 over there between 1 and 3, just be careful. The bikes will be coming by and there'll be more pedestrians. Saturday, June 21st, a car show at the Westwood Mall right by Applebee's. Mark that date down. And then for the board members, June 11th at 6 o'clock at the community room over here, the State Senator Casperson, Kivala, and Daniel will be here.
McBroom as well.
Oh, McBroom too? Okay, good. So they'll be here to, if you have any questions, mark them down or ask them at the time, so. At 6 o'clock on
June 11th.
June 11th.
That's the Marquette County Townships Association meeting, 6 o'clock, will be held here. It had been previously identified as Nagani Township Hall, but it will be here.
Thanks, Pete. Clerk Chari?
Yeah, the deadline to register for the August election is 1 month prior, so that's coming up here within a month. And then just to rehash a little bit of Treasurer Johnson's comments on the audit, I'll give you a little timeline how that happened. Basically, early May, the accountant got that audit back, and she looked at it with a fine-tuned comb. And then it was sent off back to the auditors, and then they looked at it again. And then the accountant was gone for a week on vacation, so it might have come back during that week, but it did come back, and now it was emailed to the board, and it does not have to be filed until the end of June. So we have a month worth of comments we can give to the audit, but it's an independent audit, and realistically, I mean, the board can see it and look at it and comment on it, but we really have nothing to do with it. It's not part of our business, really, so.
Well, they did meet the May deadline.
Yeah. But I mean, it doesn't have to be filed with
June.
the state until the end of June, so. Right. But I mean, you just gotta realize that it's why it's an independent audit. We don't get involved in it. That's my comments.
Other board member comments? Seeing none. Those of you who may not know, Marquette lost a treasurer this past weekend in Buck Buchanan. He was a great guy who did an incredible amount of work for not only girls softball to forward softball in this area, but also as a pioneering member of the Guts Frisbee movement. And then he's a big one to thank for all of those disc golf courses, which are starting to crop up all around Marquette. All around great guy, and just wanted to give a shout out to the folks who knew him and say, we lost a treasure here in Marquette, but he left a hell of a legacy behind that'll keep giving back to the community for many years to come. With that, I'd entertain one last motion. We are adjourned. Thanks.